First up, it looks like we have Jack Dorsey and not Grobles said he's actually a Bitcoin core developer. He's a pretty cool guy. He's a Bitcoin maximalist. And he said there is no web3, only webVC. So a nice little jingle there. And Jack actually retweeted it and said true. And if you listen to us, you would think we would agree with that because we do believe there's a lot of VC-funded Web3. However, through the cracks of the cement has grown a little organic community called Hive that isn't VC-funded. And I really believe that we're going to start to see this trend of, it's not Web3, it's webVC. It's actually a pretty clever jingle there. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's I wanted to include that tweet in the discussion this week because it feels like I don't know. I'm just enjoying somewhat watching the rest of the old Web 2 that's trying to evolve to Web 3, look at itself in the mirror and see the many problems and flaws and the way it's approaching things from a centralized point of view, and they can't seem to get past that way of thinking. And so when Jack says like agreeing to people saying web VC instead of Web 3, meaning web venture capitalists, he's basically admitting that everywhere he looks there's venture capital, and that's kind of the way it's going to be. The problem with venture capital is that it's always going to want to cash out at some point. It's not necessarily there for the cause, it's there to make money. And so it's almost like a debt on these projects. And the cool thing you just mentioned there, Dan, is that Hive has managed to find a way around this, and it self-funds via DAOs. So yes, Hive DAOs, bro. And then going even further than that with some of the things that 3Speak and the Speak network are doing to fund, using funding in conjunction with SIPs, i.e. Security infrastructure-backed DeFi pools, combined with governance tokens. We're basically removing the requirement for VC funding. It's over. That period of time in history is over, and it's time to move on. And so that tweet is just really interesting to see how a lot of the rest of the world is still stuck in the old Web 2 world of, shit, we've got to get venture capital in first to get our projects funded. So we'll see how it goes and see how that affects the so-called new Web 3 project going forwards. But I think a lot more need to look at Hive because Hive's got the answer.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about that tweet? What's interesting about that tweet is the top 2 comments when I go to it say, "Have you heard about Hive?" And another one that says, "I've just about done making a Discord interface for Hive," which is interesting. So somebody's selling him about Hive.
Yeah, you got a good old hero there. He's the hero of Twitter. I literally see he's letting everyone know. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely starting to Jack would have to know through Bluesky. And it's kind of funny what he does because he preaches a lot of the right things. He says a lot of the right things, but he is the VC. He accepted the VC backing. And it's kind of a weird moment, and maybe he doesn't have as much power. Maybe he's actually trying to do good, or maybe he's just blowing a bunch of smoke to raise a bunch of money for the next project. But talking about this earlier, you don't throw money at trying to make something decentralized. You're not saying, oh, okay, well, we want you people to learn how to make money without venture capitalists. Here's $100 million, solve it. Right? That's not how you do it. So it's just funny to see even the biggest Web 2 proponent, Twitter, Jack Dorsey, agreeing with the statement that, VC-backed communities are not the way. It's not the future. That's the old way of thinking. You're giving up too much control for funding. You got to find a way to make a spark from 2 stones and start your own fire without having to rely on anyone else. So, interesting tweet.
It's got to be from a decentralized foundation. You can't just say, oh, we've got decentralized funding. The funding that it comes from, where that funding is derived from, where those currencies are derived from, have to be from a decentralized foundation. That decentralized foundation should not have a centralized backer, shouldn't have a company, shouldn't have a VC fund. Ideally, it should come from some kind of trauma so that it's quite organic. It should have a long-term distribution. So like with Hive, it's a 5-year distribution. The biggest holder should have somewhere between 1% and 2% of the token. there should be a great distribution method so you can see that the token's being distributed. I just don't know where else you can find that. So Hive has all those ingredients to stand there and say, yeah, we are now funding from a funding pool voted by the community in a distributed way from a decentralized foundation.
Because I always say, you don't look at what's going on in terms of what people are saying they're going to do. Oh, we'll do that, we'll do this, we'll do that. It's always take a step back and who's winning and who's losing. And right now, the billionaires, whoever you want to call them, the wealthy are getting wealthier than they ever have. I think it's like by 5x or something. And the poor are getting poorer than they ever have. And so it's like whatever's happening is obviously not working. It's smoke and mirrors. It does not matter because that doesn't happen by accident. It's not like, oops, we accidentally got richer and you accidentally got poor. That's not how it works. It's constructed. And yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling the squeeze right now, especially with all the restrictions, a lot of businesses going down, a lot of people feeling trapped. That's why digital communities, being able to build up from anywhere and join value adding causes from all across the world is very important right now. As we see, I know an artist who had like a couple $100s to their name in a poorer country, made $30,000-$40,000 over the course of a month creating NFTs. That these are NFTs, these are opportunities that the world has never, ever seen on the scale of, it's mind-boggling how much it can change and how much the value economy, but it also shows you how much fiat's really out there. That's what people, I don't think, underestimate. There's a big ocean of fiat of all kinds. And when you try to put it into a capped mechanism, like Bitcoin's capped, Hive has a certain amount of inflation, it's not going to go up, it's going to keep getting lower. If you start putting them into these locked mechanics where you can't just inflate the supply, you'll start to see some pretty crazy things, like a magical coin go from under under $1 to over 50 grand. And I think that this is just the beginning in terms of what we can do to fight back. Matt, thoughts on this?
Yeah, just first of all, anything with hodling this week got my attention. I don't know why. Maybe it's a clue. Maybe it's a subliminal message. But no, that tweet there, it's getting a little bit off Web3, maybe a little bit. Although I do firmly believe that Web3 is a massive part of the solution there. But yeah, I just want to say, this to me is becoming a bit of a war, and I'm in it. I'm hodling to the death. We're building as much as we can to the death. We don't really care what happens with the tokens. We just want to make sure that we provide an alternative universe, an alternative economic system, and so. People, exactly the same time as people are feeling the squeeze in the traditional system, which they surely are. Here we are building a new economic system, building new economic opportunities for people all over the world. And I have absolutely no doubt that as the people see the squeeze in the old, traditional economic system, which I'm sure they will, if they haven't already, they'll be able to look across to the new system, to the Web3, where you own your data, where you own your content, where you own your followers lists, and no one can delete them from you. You own your account outright. Those are your assets. They are not things to be rented from and kissed ass to by people like Zuckerberg. And no one can stop you from doing that anymore. That's over. That time is over. So as people start to realize that they should use Web2 as a funnel, a traffic funnel to funnel traffic across to Web3, where once they get people there, they are in their communities permanently. They are in their followers list permanently, and those things become assets that can truly grow a lot of value and wealth. Then they start producing NFTs and tokens under the community's names. Do it in a distributed way that's decentralized and very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to regulate. All of a sudden, you have the recipes for a new economy. And new options and new opportunities for people to move across and move away voluntarily from the old system. And that old system, in many ways, what we're describing here is a revolution, but it's a revolution without having to fire a shot. It will be people voluntarily looking across, seeing that there's people doing well on the other side on this new Web3 infrastructure, and voluntarily choosing to move across and start then, go find their opportunities there. And so I'm super, super excited about it. And I feel like, I really feel like, in line with the tweet from Holdenort there, we're doing the right thing here. We're really trying to be part of that new economic system and provide opportunities to people to live a new life and expand away from the old traditional Web2 economic system that's putting the squeeze on everyone right now.
Yeah, it's really well said. it's definitely crazy time, crazy opportunity, but also crazy malice, in my opinion. Any thoughts on this, Robert?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I love listening to Matt speak because he's, visionary and he's inspiring and, you feel the energy. But then I think about Jack Dorsey, right, and his tweet. And I think about my path to Hive, for example, which went through BitClout or DSO. And I was really enamored with that system on first blush before I found some of the limitations of what they've built onto it, just in terms of functionality. And I didn't give much thought to is this web VC or is this web3? Because I'm a newcomer and I'm like one of legions of newcomers who are going to go down this path. And I was really ready to subscribe to that system. I used fiat to buy some DSO so that I could have, clout on the system and reward people with, my DSOs or my creator coin or however that works. And but then I talked to Matt a little while later. I discover Hive. I talked to Matt, and he points out that there's like one account that has 175 million of Bitcoin in it from Andreessen Horowitz or whoever backed that, and that's going to cause problems down the line for that community. So there's definitely a Web 2 to Web 3 funnel that's going to attract people like me to come into this world as early adopters in this coming wave. But how are they going to get funneled into the sane networks like Hive versus the networks that are basically going to be architected in such a ways to give Andreessen Horowitz a good payout?
Yeah. I mean, can I have a crack at this, Dan?
Yeah, please.
So I think, just briefly, what should happen in theory is that either these communities will realize what you've just said and look at ways of forking out the original VCs to get them away. Because the VCs are a risk, not just because they're going to be dumping on the community over time, but also because they're a regulatory risk. And a lot of the VCs are in indirectly because they are there to help the regulators at a certain point. So you're going to get censorship, you're going to get rollbacks, you're going to get preferential treatment happening. That's almost baked into a lot of the cakes of these alt Web3 systems. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to bad talk the Web3 systems. I think they've got great ideas, they've got great developers and great technology, and I really hope we come up with a way to work together. The other thing that I think you're going to see is that the VCs are going to be a drag on the system. So that, where with a Web3 system that's got a foundation that hasn't got a VC, hasn't got a premine, hasn't got an entity behind it, that's proven itself, that distributes its token well, etc. Those things are actually going to be able to return the majority of value back to the users, if not all of it. So you'll see like an efficiency in the tokens, in my opinion. You'll be able to see very clearly that the tokens that content creators have on the semi-Web3 systems, let's call them, they'll do very well, I'm sure. Some of them will get regulated, some of them will get into trouble, but they'll be able to return a certain value back to the token holders via the market caps. Whereas the systems that are really purely decentralized, that don't have any entities, don't have any VCs that are going to extract value, all of that value is going to get locked into the tokens. So you're going to have like an almost 100% efficiency of the value of that ecosystem, of that community getting locked into the market caps of the tokens. And so in theory, it should result in a higher market cap for the tokens over time. And I think that's where it'll end up going. I think that's one of the places it could kind of show it very clearly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's, I've said it, I don't know how many times, but censorship resistance, it's like keeping up with the garden. And if you're having pre-mines, if you're having centralized backing, it's putting yourself uphill, and it's making the job it's making a very hard job nearly impossible. So, and it's very hard to recover from that. Obviously, we have firsthand experience of what can really happen when somebody controls the chain. It's not pretty, and if you're not setting up for censorship resistance from the get-go, there's a point where the boat leaves the dock and you just have to, you have to deal with it. And a lot of these people aren't lifting the anchors and not wanting to leave the port, the safety of that centralized hub, of that centralized funding, and that's really going to come back to bite a lot of these systems. And it's going to be a massive blow to what is Web3.
Just trust us. We're going to decentralize. Just trust us.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. But
well, I just before we move on there, Dan, I just want to say one more thing about Jack's tweet there, which I think is really, really telling, because up until now we haven't really been able to tell what Bluesky is going to be, whether it's going to blow Hive out the water and they really are going to set it up in the right way, or whether they've had to forfeit certain elements of it because of VC funding. So it's sounding more and more clear to me now, like Bluesky is a venture capitalist funded project, and there's certain forfeits they've had to take along the way to make the thing work. And I'm still almost certain that the thing's a direct copy of Hive, just that it'll be funded in a certain way such that it won't be a decentralized funded system. And so
they're appointing leaders. They're appointing leaders to the decentralized so you have this decentralized group, and of course the first thing you have to do is have the biggest VC of all time appoint a leader of the group. That way you can ensure from the top down it's decentralized, because without a leader, what would you do?
They're going to decentralize it. Yeah, the leaders will be in charge of decentralizing the token.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. Whilst I assume at the same time dodging the SEC, there'll be some talented people.
Oh man.